I'm going to use the old lady's room," Cho said with a nasty smirk. Her expression filled me with intense disgust. The lousy daughter-in-law should live in the shed. My in-laws agreed with Chloe and started to drive me out. I thought we got along well, but in the end, they sided with her. Seeing them share Chloe's repulsive smile wiped away any familial affection I had. Instead, a strong anger surged within me. "All right, I'll do as you wish," I responded, much to the delight of Chloe and my in-laws. Turning my back on them, I left the house with just my essentials. They needed a lesson to be brought down a notch. The only one I still cared about was Grace, who had always been concerned about me. Sometime later, I received a frantic call from my in-laws on my cell phone. It was answered by my husband, James. "What the heck is going on?" Chloe's shrieking voice was the first thing I heard. "Our house is gone, turned into an empty lot. I'm Anna. I'm a 46-year-old homemaker. I grew up in the foster system after losing my parents in a car accident when I was very young. With no grandparents and no relatives to take me in, I ended up in foster care. Growing up there, I sometimes faced harassment at school, so I didn't have many close friends. Despite that, I had friends in the foster system. The older ones taught me a lot, and the younger ones adored me. Just having them was enough to make me happy. After graduating high school, I got a job without being adopted. My school experiences made me shy away from social interactions, so I immersed myself in work. Then I met someone, the first person outside the system to acknowledge me. "You work hard every day. Thanks to your diligent work, our jobs are easier." "Oh, thank you," I replied. That was James, who is now my husband. He appreciated my work and often complimented me. Gradually, we started talking personally, and when I shared my dream with him, he said he wanted to support and help me. With his encouragement, I worked hard towards achieving my dream. After a few years as a working adult, I managed to fulfill my dream. "Would you like to go out with me?" he asked. "If that's okay," I replied. He then confessed his feelings for me. I was drawn to his kindness and how he had supported my dream, so I accepted his proposal. "Thank you, but there's something I need to tell you," he said. I learned that James was divorced and had a daughter. While dating him, I got to meet his daughter, Chloe. Chloe had a sweet face and was always smiling. "Be my mom, big sis," she'd say to me. After we met a few times, I decided to become her mother. My main concern was James's parents. Coming from a foster home, I worried they might have a bad impression of me, thinking I was poorly raised or lacked parental love. I feared they might not approve of our marriage. "What a lovely young lady," they said. "Ah, what a wonderful woman you are. Please take good care of James and Chloe." Despite my worries, James's parents welcomed me warmly. I was sure we could build a beautiful family together. I truly believed that until we got married. Not long after our wedding, I got pregnant with our son, Ethan. I thought we'd have a happy life forever and be able to overcome any challenge. That was until I saw their true colors. "Hey, Auntie, give me some money," Chloe demanded. "I already gave you your allowance last week," I replied. "That's not nearly enough," she retorted. The sweet young Chloe I knew had grown into a completely different person. She hardly went to high school, skipping classes to hang out somewhere every day, and she always seemed to be asking for money. "What do you need it for?" "Explain that first, then I'll decide whether to give you more. And the school called, you need to attend regularly." "Shut up, you're not my real mom, so stop butting in," Chloe snapped. I was momentarily stunned. It was true, I wasn't her biological mother, but I had always tried to be a mother to her. "Chloe, that's no way to speak to Anna. She's been a real mother to you, blood or not," James scolded her, standing up for me. Whatever, I'm out of here. Chloe huffed and probably headed to her grandparents' place. I'll call my parents. Just leave her be, James said, as Chloe stormed out of the house. We knew where she was going. It was her grandparents' house, just a short walk away. Mom, Chloe's probably coming over. Please don't coddle her and send her back. James called his parents, but they were doting and indulgent, never listening to him. Poor Chloe, abandoned by her birth mom. At least we should be on her side, they always said, giving in to her demands. It wasn't like this when I first remarried. Back then, they maintained a reasonable distance, occasionally playing with Chloe. They were just normal grandparents. But their overindulgence started when Ethan was born. Grandpa and Grandma probably don't like me, Ethan noticed, seeing the favoritism towards his sister. Despite being James's child and their grandchild, they always favored Chloe, saying poor Chloe and indulging her with whatever she wanted, from birthday presents to Christmas gifts. Ethan is my child too. If you keep upsetting him like this, I won't support you anymore, James angrily told his parents, prompting them to treat Ethan more equally. They reluctantly complied on the surface. I couldn't understand their obsession with Chloe. It was probably because of Chloe's biological mother, James's ex-wife. James's first wife was a beautiful woman, a childhood friend, and his parents' favorite. I'd heard a lot about her. Even James described her as a bitter memory. Back then, he wasn't interested in romance and saw her as just a close friend. However, with encouragement from those around them and her strong advances, they started dating. She got pregnant while in college, so they married because his parents said he had to take responsibility. But she was unfaithful. After getting pregnant and dropping out of college, she disappeared, leaving behind baby Chloe. James quickly found out she had moved in with a wealthy man. She settled alimony and child support in one payment, and they divorced. I do feel sorry for her, but coddling her isn't helping, I said. James nodded. I understand how you feel, Anna, and you're truly right. Despite the circumstances, I felt sympathy for Chloe. I was determined to be a real mother to her. But after remarrying, she became hostile, especially when I was pregnant with Ethan. There was an incident where she tried to push me down the stairs. Luckily, James was nearby and saved me. Chloe is becoming more like my ex-wife as she grows. James often sighed, deeply troubled by her behavior. You're not at fault. You're a good father to both Chloe and Ethan. I would console him, though we both wondered what to do. Moving due to James's job was difficult, and separating Chloe from her grandparents seemed impossible. What's wrong? Ethan asked, noticing our worry. Nothing, we hastily replied, focusing on him. That day, Chloe stayed at her grandparents' and didn't come home. Time passed, and on the day she graduated high school, she suddenly announced, I'm moving out. James and I were shocked. Why all of a sudden? I asked. I'm pregnant, so I'm leaving, she said. James's expression turned to anger, reminded of his ex-wife. Chloe, I told you not to turn out like her, like your mother. Shut up. What I do is my business, Chloe retorted. Fine, if you want to be that way, then leave. I disown you. Don't ever call yourself my daughter again, James shouted. I told you I would do that from the beginning, Chloe replied coolly and left. She could leave so easily because her grandparents had provided financial support. Didn't I tell you not to spoil Chloe and give her money after she messed up? What were you thinking? James stormed over to his parents' place, angry about their actions. After I calmed things down, Ethan looked at his grandparents intently. Chloe turned out this way because Grandpa and Grandma spoiled her. If you both really cared about her, you should have stopped, Ethan said. He didn't have a good relationship with Chloe. He admired her as a sister when he was younger, but soon realized her true nature and distanced himself. Chloe continued to call Ethan a gloomy idiot, which only motivated him to focus on his studies. Despite being a grade schooler, he had very mature thoughts. "I'm glad my grandparents disliked me. It made me a better person," he said. His grandparents were shocked. They never imagined Ethan was aware of their dislike, let alone that he would be glad about it. "We're sorry. We were wrong." They apologized sincerely. They regretted spoiling Cho too much, thinking they were helping a poor child. "You're too late in realizing that," Ethan said, asserting his maturity. I tried to calm him while patting his head, but he said, "Stop it. I'm not a kid anymore." Ethan might have taken after James, being straightforward and stern with his grandparents. Seeing Ethan's growth eased our frustration with Chloe. The grandparents later changed their behavior, maintaining a reasonable distance while occasionally sending gifts. This could mend our relationship in time. "Anna, you're kind," James said, slightly embarrassed. They were among the few people outside the foster system who accepted me, so I wanted to believe in them. James seemed thoughtful as I explained this. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," James replied, smiling kindly. We continued to live a peaceful life, maintaining a suitable distance from the grandparents. Ethan grew up and became interested in our work. "I want to do the same job as you and Dad," he said. We supported his dream, and ever studious, Ethan would sometimes seek our guidance. Each time, we would teach him, and as he grew, so did his understanding. Meanwhile, Chloe had cut off contact after receiving money from the grandparents. We decided to leave her be, not knowing where she was. Am I being heartless? I wondered. Not at all. You did enough, Mom, James and Ethan assured me. I smiled and thanked them, but I still wondered. I looked at an old photo of Chloe smiling brightly. Why did it turn out this way? I whispered. It was time to focus on Ethan's future. It took me years, but I finally managed to move on. Years passed and Ethan, once a grade schooler, became a college student. "I'm thinking about becoming independent and living near my college," he said. He started living alone. We visited him occasionally, seeing him struggle with chores but trying his best. "Anna, can we talk about something?" James asked one day, right after Ethan moved out. Apparently, his parents' house was deteriorating and needed repairs soon. The renovation would be costly, too much for his parents to handle alone. "Why don't we live together?" I suggested. "Really? Are you sure?" he asked. "Yes, as long as you're okay with it," I replied. By then, our relationship with his parents had improved. We decided to buy a two-family home with completely separate living areas. "Thank you for suggesting we live together, Anna. We'll make sure not to bother you," they promised. True to their word, they never interfered and always called before coming over. Our interactions were limited to occasional shared meals and food exchanges. We continued to maintain a healthy distance. Then one day, James had to go on a long business trip abroad. "Call me anytime. Don't hesitate just because they're my parents," he said. "Don't worry, I'll be fine," I reassured him. Indeed, our relationship with his parents remained unchanged, each respecting the other's space. Perhaps my busier work schedule and later homecomings played a part. A month passed, and James settled into his work abroad. Then unexpectedly, Chloe showed up at our house with 4 children in tow. "It's been a while, Chloe," I said, shocked by the sudden turn of events. My in-laws welcomed her with smiles. I later found out they had been in touch with Chloe even after she left. "I'm going to live here with these kids from today," Chloe declared abruptly. It was a situation I couldn't immediately accept. However, Chloe, having divorced and led a troubled life during her student years, had no one else to turn to except her grandparents. The youngest child was still a baby, so for the time being, we decided to let them stay on the parents' side of the house. "What? She just left on her own, and now she comes back without Anna's permission." I immediately informed James about Chloe's return. He was furious and said he'd come back right away, but being overseas and due to work commitments, it wasn't easy for him to return immediately. "It's okay for now," They're staying on the parents' side, and if anything happens, I can ask Ethan for help. Yet, with Chloe's return, our once harmonious relationship was disrupted. Chloe continued her ways, leaving her children with the grandparents while she went out every day. Anna, can I ask you a favor? The elderly in-laws couldn't handle the young kids alone, so I switched to working from home and started looking after the children during work breaks. Gradually, it became a given for the in-laws to leave the children with me, eventually dropping them off at our side of the house whenever Chloe went out. I'm sorry for always being a bother. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I'll manage. For a while, as I have to work now, can you handle it alone? Yes, I'm fine. The others are napping, and I'll finish my homework. Fortunately, the eldest daughter, Grace, was a responsible and good kid who actively took care of her younger siblings. She helped with chores and always looked apologetic, making me feel sorry for her. It was my fault for always accepting the situation, but the real issue was Chloe leaving her children and going out. 1 minute, Chloe. What? I can hear you. No need to shout. One day, I decided to confront Chloe, who had returned home in the morning. You're a parent. Take care of your children properly. As usual, you're so nagging, and you're the one living here, so you should take better care of the household. Confused by her words, I tilted my head. Apparently, the in-laws had been complaining to Chloe about me not doing household chores or fulfilling my duties as a daughter-in-law. I turned to the in-laws, startled by Chloe's words. It's true, right? Absolutely. What kind of daughter-in-law stays in her room doing who knows what? I was dumbfounded, having never heard such complaints from them before. Chloe was arrested for causing a scene in the restaurant and assaulting a staff member. It also came out that she had been committing marriage fraud, leading on multiple boyfriends with promises of marriage, which led to a complaint being filed. Her father mentioned that her crimes had accumulated, making it possible for him to gain custody of the children. After moving to our new home, Chloe's ex-husband brought Grace and her siblings over to visit. That's how we learned about Chloe's situation. Grace seemed happy living with her father, which was a relief. Despite the in-laws repeatedly pleading for help, we hung up without a word. They were living in poverty after we cut off financial support, having spent too much on Chloe, and now burdened with compensating the restaurant. They were forced to work despite their old age. By the way, they even came to my college, Ethan mentioned. Were you okay? I asked, concerned. Yeah, I realized it quickly and called the police before they could approach me. The police took them away, Ethan replied calmly. I was relieved by how level-headed he was. Due to the incident, they also lost their part-time jobs and were pushed further into poverty. Unlike the in-laws, things were going great for us. My company was expanding rapidly overseas, and James and I were leading busy yet fulfilling lives. Oh, by the way, I've got a girlfriend. Can I bring her over to meet you? Ethan asked. The girl he brought was kind and sincere, the complete opposite of Chloe. Though I couldn't judge immediately, seeing them so happy together made me feel she might be right for Ethan. Hey, Anna, once work calms down, how about we go on a spa trip together? James suggested. That sounds lovely. I smiled and agreed. I worked hard, looking forward to our spa trip. Years passed and Ethan joined my company as my successor, working hard every day. His girlfriend, who said she wanted to be Ethan's right hand like her father-in-law, also joined our company. The two of them got married and lived nearby. Actually, she's from the same orphanage as Mom, Ethan revealed, which brought me and her closer. Today, the young couple is visiting, and I've prepared a special feast to welcome them. When she told us about their child, we were overwhelmed with joy. Chloe looked displeased and immediately asked, "What did you do with our house?" We were astounded. Does this girl have any sense of parental responsibility? The first thing you should be worried about is the kids, I said. Chloe fell silent for a moment, realizing she hadn't thought about them. Where are the kids? They're with their father now, I replied. How dare you do that without asking? She snapped, claiming the kids were hers and she couldn't get child support without them. You're the one being selfish, James yelled, drawing everyone's attention. I intended to raise you as if you were my own, even though you're not. I didn't want you to end up like my ex-wife. But in the end, you turned out just like her. What? Not blood-related? Chloe muttered in disbelief. Even her parents seemed shocked. Yes, Chloe, you're the child of my ex-wife and her lover, James revealed. That's a lie, she exclaimed. James explained that he took responsibility after being told to do so, raising Chloe out of pity and hoping she'd have a better life than her mother. But it was all in vain. Why didn't you tell us? The in-laws asked. Have you ever seriously listened to what I had to say? You always ignored my opinions, James replied coldly. No matter how much I told them not to spoil Chloe, they never changed. They tried to appear fair to Ethan only because James insisted. I remember the in-laws' behavior, I said. No matter what, they always favored Chloe and left the kids with me when they were busy. James continued, you said you accepted Anna being from an orphanage, but you probably never truly accepted her. To you, Chloe and her mother were always more important. You're right, the in-laws admitted, unable to meet our eyes. Chloe is yours now. Don't ever involve us again, I said. Same here. I have no intention of helping you, James added. I feel the same. I can't forgive you for betraying me, Ethan chimed in. We each expressed our final words, and the in-laws hung their heads. What's all this? It's all lies. There's no way she could pay off a mortgage. Chloe finally snapped out of her shock and glared at me. Oh, didn't I mention? I'm actually a CEO, I revealed. What? Indeed, I am a CEO. My dream was to own my own company, and I achieved it after saving money and working hard for several years. Anna was the first person I truly loved, so I wanted to follow her, James added. We built our business together, even expanding overseas. James's business trips were for leading our overseas branch, and Ethan was studying business to succeed me. That's a lie. You, a CEO? No way. Chloe stammered, clearly shaken. You never had any interest in Mom's work, did you? Ethan said coldly. His voice sounded just like James's, which I found oddly fitting. When the kids were young, I'd always worked from home as much as possible, I explained. Despite James's help, it was a busy life juggling work, household chores, and childcare. I saw Mom working hard every day, discussing complicated matters on the phone. Even if you didn't know she was a CEO, you should have realized she was earning well, Ethan continued. But your mother never gave me an allowance, Chloe protested. That's because you spent your allowance within a week, Ethan countered. Mom would give you more if you explained why you needed it. She thought about you, unlike some people. He then took out his smartphone and showed Chloe a video of me being interviewed on TV. Mom's famous enough to be featured. I thought you came back to take advantage of that. You've always been insolent, even as my younger brother, Chloe said bitterly. When did you ever treat me like a brother? You were hostile just because I was Mom's son, and we're not even blood-related. Do you think I would actually listen to my so-called sister? Chloe fell silent, unable to retort, but her eyes still glared at us with resentment. Chloe, I wanted to be your real mother, regardless of the blood connection, but that didn't happen. Now, I don't want to be your mother. In fact, I feel disgusted, I said, trying to contain my emotions. This can't be happening. It's all lies, Chloe exclaimed. Anyway, from now on, we won't help or support you. You're on your own, James stated firmly. With that, we stood up, paid for our meals, and left the restaurant. You've ruined my life, Chloe shouted. That's our line. If only you weren't here, James retorted. As we walked away, we could hear them arguing loudly behind us. After that, James and I safely returned to our new home. The new place has a large garden, and we were discussing how to beautify it together. Despite repeated pleas from the in-laws asking for our new address, we ignored them. Apparently, after we left, Chloe and the in-laws had a huge fight. In response, Cho suddenly said, "Oh, that reminds me, if you can't fulfill your role, you should leave." "What if you leave? I can use your room, and with you gone, it'll be quieter for me to stay at home. So get out." What was she talking about? I almost yelled in response, but then I noticed Grace watching us. I didn't want to show her a scene of arguing with Chloe. Despite my feelings, Chloe smiled triumphantly. "I'll use your room," Chloe said with a sly grin, seeming to relish the moment. Her expression filled me with strong disgust. "Live in the storage room, you terrible wife," she added. As my in-laws joined in to kick me out, I thought we had a good relationship, but in the end, they sided with her. Seeing the in-laws with the same unpleasant smile as Chloe, any familial affection I had vanished, replaced by a strong anger. "Fine, I'll do as you wish." Chloe and my in-laws were delighted with my response. Turning my back on them, I left the house with just the essentials. They needed to be taught a lesson, even if it meant taking them down to rock bottom. The only thing that bothered me was leaving Grace, who cared about me until the end. "Ethan, sorry to bother you so early, but can I come over to your apartment?" I contacted Ethan, then caught a taxi and left our two-family house. "Welcome, Mom. Take your time and relax. Sorry for the sudden visit." Ethan, knowing the situation, warmly welcomed me. "What about Dad? He's coming back home right away." A few hours later, James also returned, joining us. "That Chloe and those two, I won't forgive them." "Calm down, I'm not going to let this go either." And so we started planning our strategy. First, the kids. If things stay this way, Grace and the others will be unhappy. We decided to completely separate Grace and the others from Chloe. "Got it. You don't know anything, right?" "Yeah, I understand." James pretended to be clueless and contacted the in-laws. Ethan and I listened in on speakerphone. Initially wary, the in-laws soon returned to their usual selves, thinking James knew nothing. "Since you're getting along well with Anna, why don't you all go on a spa trip together? I'll send you 3 tickets, so have a good time." James offered them a spa trip. As expected, the in-laws left the house happily, taking Chloe instead of me. Meanwhile, I returned home with James and Ethan. "Aunt Anna, you're back. Sorry for worrying you." "It's all okay now." At home, Grace was there, crying anxiously with her younger siblings. I immediately took steps to protect the children and began gathering their belongings. "Grace, do you know your dad's contact details?" "Yeah, I remember." "Can you call him?" "Yes, I can." Luckily, Grace remembered her father's contact number, so I was able to contact him. Apparently, he comes from a wealthy family and chose to divorce Chloe after learning of her infidelity. Guess a love for money runs in the family. I couldn't help but chuckle at James's remark. By the way, it seems the father had intended to take all the kids, but before any agreement was made, Chloe disappeared with them. He had been searching for them ever since, so when I reached out this time, he was grateful and promptly came to take the children. "Thank you, Aunt Anna, and I'm sorry for all the trouble," said Grace, thanking and apologizing to me multiple times, while happily leaving with her siblings and father. We watched them go with smiles and then got moving. Now there were no regrets left. "Hello. Actually, there's something I need to ask." I contacted a real estate agent while James handled various arrangements and Ethan moved out the belongings. As a result of our coordination, the house was completely emptied. After completing various procedures, we decided to move. "It'll be interesting to see their faces," I said with a laugh, and James and Ethan chuckled along. Not long after, a barrage of calls came from my in-laws. James answered, and the first thing we heard was Chloe's shrill voice. James looked fed up, his face showing clear annoyance as he listened to her rant. In summary, the house was gone, turned into an empty lot. The speakerphone revealed the in-laws demanding explanations and asking about their great-grandchildren. "What's going on?" they asked. "There's nothing going on. That house was bought by Anna, and she's been paying a $4,000 mortgage on it. What she does with it is her business." "What? Dad, you mean the old lady's been paying a $4,000 mortgage?" Joe sounded confused, clearly not expecting James's response or that I was the one paying. "For now, we've sent your belongings to an apartment. You go there," James explained coldly. "We'll have a discussion later at a time and place of our choosing. Stay put until then." With that, he ended the call. "Now the real game begins," he said. A few days later, we met Chloe and her parents at a family restaurant.
Today, my brother apologized on behalf of his fiancée. "She looks down on me because I don't have a college degree. It bothers me. But I didn't want to dislike someone who will soon be family. I hoped that with time, we might understand each other better. But that day never came. My name is Emily. I'm 34 years old and I live with my dad. I run a bakery business with my mom. We don't have many locations yet, but we're in a transit center and business is picking up, so life is busy." One day, my brother, who is 2 years older than me, suddenly announced his engagement. I was surprised because I never knew him to date anyone. I was excited to meet his fiancée. My brother is kind-hearted and rarely gets angry, so I assumed she must be a kind person too. However, when she came to our family meeting, she was nothing like I had imagined. "Wow, this house is huge. What's it worth?" Olivia, my brother's fiancée, asked upon meeting us. I was shocked that she'd ask about the value of the house right away. "Our family home is spacious and nearly renovated. I'd love to live here after the wedding," she continued. I started to say that I didn't know about living together, but my mom cut me off, saying we'd discuss it later. Then my mom asked Olivia how she and my brother met. Olivia replied that they met at a bakery and fell in love at first sight. Olivia got my brother's contact information right away because he usually works at the headquarters. The conversation flowed between Olivia, Dad, and Mom, but I couldn't stand her tone. "Which university did you graduate from, Emily?" she asked me out of the blue. Olivia boasted about her time studying abroad during college and now working at a tourist spot catering to international visitors. When asked about my education, I honestly said I never went to college. I wanted to start working as soon as possible. I explained before Olivia interrupted loudly. "What, you dropped out?" She covered her mouth and exaggerated her reaction. "Emily is hardworking. I look up to her even now." My brother tried to defend me, but Olivia cut him off again. "Didn't you have trouble finding a job because you dropped out?" Olivia asked with a condescending tone. Annoyed by Olivia's attitude, I snapped, admitting I had a period of unstable employment. Olivia burst into laughter. "So, you're still just a bakery worker because you dropped out, right?" My brother sternly warned her, "Don't mock my sister. What matters is who you are, not your education." I was glad my brother stood up for me. Olivia seemed to sulk after being scolded. She avoided eye contact with me. As we were about to say our goodbyes, I accidentally bumped into Olivia returning from the restroom. Feeling awkward, I tried to pass quickly when I heard her sigh dramatically. "People like you who drop out are just in the way. Please leave our nice home." Her voice, once sugary sweet, had turned cold. Stunned by her transformation, I was at a loss for words. Olivia continued, "You have no education. You are 34, single, and still living with your parents. Don't come to the wedding. It could be embarrassing." Her words were so shocking that I was left speechless. I wondered if I should tell my parents and brother about Olivia's harsh words. However, my parents were overjoyed to have a lovely daughter-in-law. Even if I told them now, they might not believe me. They might think I'm lying because I'm bitter about being mocked for my lack of education. After all, they were strongly against my decision not to go to college. I've always been considered the odd one out and struggled with group settings. The idea of being commanded by teachers to do the same things as everyone else was unbearable. During career counseling, both my parents and teachers told me that no one would hire a dropout. When no one hires me, I'll start my own company, I declared, leaving my parents speechless. My brother was the only one who supported me. Despite our parents' strong objections, my brother thought it suited my personality not to work for someone else. He advised me not to rely on mom and dad for startup money and to study business management. After finishing middle school, I took various temp jobs from retail to manufacturing, saving up for my business. On my days off, I hit the library to study business management on my own. Years later, while temping at a bakery, I had a fateful encounter. When I told the owner about my business aspirations, he took me seriously and taught me the ropes of bread making. By my mid-20s, I had saved enough to open a small bakery. I found joy in running the business and noticed customer preferences varied by location and time of day. Sandwiches sold well near transit centers in the morning, while loaves and kid-friendly bread were popular in residential areas. Analyzing customer trends and succeeding in business was rewarding. I started planning one store after another, and now I am the president of several stores. My biggest supporter has always been my brother. He even quit his sales job at a food company to join my business. It's promising with a hard-working entrepreneur like Emily, he said. He genuinely believed in my potential, and thanks to his efforts, the number of stores and employees have increased. Despite Olivia's hostility towards me, she's normal with my brother and parents. Just because she mocks my education doesn't mean she is a bad person. I thought that with time, her views might change. I decided to think positively about my relationship with Olivia, so I kept quiet about her harsh words for now. My biggest supporter has always been my brother. He even quit his sales job at a food company to join my business. It's promising with a hard-working entrepreneur like Emily, he said. He genuinely believed in my potential, and thanks to his efforts, the number of stores and employees have increased. Despite Olivia's hostility towards me, she's normal with my brother and parents. Just because she mocks my education doesn't mean she is a bad person. I thought that with time, her views might change. I decided to think positively about my relationship with Olivia, so I kept quiet about her harsh words for now. As I was contemplating this, my brother called to apologize for what happened earlier. I'm sorry for what happened today. I'll tell Olivia that you're the CEO of our company. That should change her attitude, he said. I asked him to keep it a secret, fearing it might make her uncomfortable, and he agreed to stay quiet for a while. I wanted to face Olivia without the baggage of education or status. If my brother loved her, I thought we would understand each other someday. However, I later realized that was an illusion. They registered their marriage and started preparing for the wedding. Occasionally, my brother would bring Olivia to meet our parents. I greeted her warmly despite feeling tense. She'd smile in front of my brother and parents, but when we were alone, she'd hurl insults. Why did you get married? You can't even do that. This mansion will be mine. You're in the way, so leave. She'd whisper so no one else could hear. Still, I refrained from arguing, hoping to understand the woman my brother loved. But Olivia's hurtful words left me feeling down. Before I knew it, even at work, I found myself sighing heavily when I thought about her visits. I should be excited about the upcoming wedding this weekend, but I can't be. I hate myself for it. I can't tell my brother, who's already legally married, to call off the wedding. The one who noticed my troubled state and reached out was a female coworker who usually worked at the store, but was at the headquarters today for some reason. Do you know the rumors about your brother, the boss? It's been the talk among the employees, she mentioned. When she mentioned rumors, I had no idea what she was talking about. My brother has a good reputation for being serious both inside and outside the company. Could he be disliked at the store? Your brother's reputation is great, but his fiancée? She hesitated. I was shocked to hear the content of the rumor. Wait, is that rumor true? I couldn't help but ask. I don't know if it's true, But everyone's talking about it, she replied. So I decided to make a call to find out the truth about the rumors I heard. As the weekend approached, my brother and Olivia's wedding took place. I was told not to come, but of course, I'm his sister, so I had to be there. Olivia, who had been all smiles and smart appearances, seemed to be in a great mood. Seeing my brother's smile in ignorance made my heart ache. I was boiling with anger, remembering the rumor I heard the other day. I wonder how long you can keep smiling, I muttered, looking at Olivia's smiling face. After the reception, I had to head to the bride and groom's waiting room. When I knocked on the door, Olivia's voice answered from inside. Entering the room, I realized my brother was nowhere to be found. Olivia, upon seeing me, clearly showed her disdain. "What are you doing here?" The cheerful bride from moments ago now had a frown. I said nothing and moved closer. "What are you doing? Don't come near me, you loser. If he stays married to someone like you, my brother will never be happy. Why don't you just leave?" Olivia was furious at my presence, brazenly insulting me and talking about cutting ties. I gave a small laugh and looked into Olivia's eyes. "You are having an affair with another man, yet you act so high and mighty." Olivia's face stiffened for a moment, but she maintained her defiant attitude. "I don't know what you're talking about. Get out." Olivia tried to forcibly remove me from the room. Just then, my brother burst into the room, his face red with anger, and shouted, "The one who should leave is you both." Olivia and I were stunned by my usually mild-mannered brother's yelling. "I heard everything from outside. What's this about an affair? And how dare you talk to my sister like that?" Olivia, unaware that my brother had been listening, looked pale as a ghost. "It's not what you think." Tears filled her eyes. As I was contemplating the situation, I decided to make a call to find out the truth about the rumors I heard. Meanwhile, the weekend arrived, and my brother and Olivia's wedding took place. Despite being told not to come, I attended because, after all, I'm his sister. Olivia, who had been all smiles and sophistication, appeared to be in a great mood. Seeing my brother's oblivious smile made my heart ache with anger over the rumor I had heard. "I wonder how long you can keep smiling," I muttered, looking at Olivia's cheerful face. After the reception, I went to the waiting room for the bride and groom. Knocking on the door, I heard Olivia's voice answer from inside. As I entered, I realized my brother was nowhere to be found. Olivia's expression changed to one of disdain upon seeing me. "What are you doing here?" The cheerful bride from moments ago now frowned. I moved closer without saying a word. "Don't come near me, you loser. If my brother stays married to someone like you, he'll never be happy. Why don't you just leave?" Olivia was furious, hurling insults and talking about cutting ties. I chuckled slightly and met her gaze. "You're having an affair with another man, yet you act so high and mighty." Olivia's face momentarily stiffened, but she quickly regained her composure. "I don't know what you're talking about. Get out." Olivia tried to force me out of the room. Suddenly, my brother burst into the room, his face flushed with anger. "Both of you should leave." Olivia and I were stunned by his uncharacteristic outburst. "I heard everything from outside. What's this about an affair? And how dare you talk to my sister like that?" Unaware that my brother had been listening, Olivia looked pale and stammered, "It's not what you think," tears welling in her eyes. I pulled out documents and photos, laying them on the table. The pictures showed Olivia hugging a man who wasn't my brother in public. My brother looked speechless. He probably never suspected his wife was cheating on him. "He's just a close friend," Olivia tried to explain, but it was clearly unbelievable. I revealed that I had hired a private investigator. "It seems you meet this close friend quite often, even inviting him to your home late at night." My brother pressed her for an explanation, but Olivia remained silent, realizing she had no more excuses. Fed up with her attitude, my brother said, "I never thought you'd be like this. Let's get a divorce." Olivia, shocked by the sudden demand for divorce right after the wedding, started to panic. "How can we divorce now? What will I tell everyone?" "Just say you were caught cheating and had to divorce." I'll hand all the evidence to my brother, so make sure to pay the alimony in the divorce trial." Olivia, trembling with rage, yelled at me, "There's no way someone like you could afford a private investigator. You've been stalking me, haven't you? If I had that much free time, I'd rather be working. You see, I'm the CEO of the company, the same company where your husband, my brother, works. I finally revealed my true identity." "That's a lie. You're just a part-time worker living off your parents," Olivia scoffed. "No, that's your misconception. I wanted to face you without any preconceptions about educational background or status. I thought maybe we could understand each other someday, since you're the woman my brother loves. That's why I asked my brother not to tell you that I'm the CEO." Olivia looked incredulous and turned to my brother, who nodded. "So, you're saying you're the one paying John's salary? You built this mansion?" Olivia's eyes widened, her mouth opening and closing in disbelief. "An employee tipped me off about rumors regarding my brother's fiancée cozying up to an unknown man. No one wanted to tell my brother directly, so he never noticed. I don't mind spending money on a private investigator if it helps my brother see the truth." Olivia seemed overwhelmed by the flood of information. I decided to leave the rest to my brother. "I had hoped that we could understand each other someday, but what a waste of time. As a wife, shouldn't you at least remember the name of your husband's company's CEO? Not that it matters now that you're getting a divorce." With a scornful remark, I left the room. A few days later, my brother, who had decided to divorce, reported it to Mom and Dad. They questioned him, asking why. He told them about Olivia's problematic behavior and her affair. Dad and Mom were slow to believe him, only knowing the act Olivia had been putting on. However, a few days later, an event occurred that made them believe my brother. Late at night, the doorbell rang. When we opened the door at such an hour, there stood Olivia. "It's your fault John left me," she yelled, lunging at me. Dad quickly restrained Olivia, but her verbal abuse towards me continued. "What CEO? You have no education and no man in your life. You're pathetic." Dad and Mom were stunned by Olivia's true colors. Now they must have a clear understanding of her real character. Mom called Olivia's parents and asked them to come pick her up. When she told them about the verbal abuse and the affair, Olivia's parents, who knew nothing about it, deeply apologized. Olivia was also forced to apologize and broke down crying in frustration. "Please never show your face here again," I said, and she was dragged away by her parents. My brother filed for divorce using the evidence of the affair I had gathered and claimed alimony, not only from Olivia, but also from the man she was involved with. He managed to secure about $30,000 in total. He gave me a portion of the alimony, saying it was for the trouble I had gone through, and the money spent on the private investigator. Rumors spread that Olivia was caught cheating and got divorced, and it seems she is now receiving cold shoulders from her friends. I heard from a gossip-loving employee that Olivia has become a recluse since losing her friends. My brother was feeling down, saying he's had enough of women, but I'm sure my sincere and kind brother will meet someone good someday. Wishing for my brother's happiness, I continue to work hard to grow the company. One day, I suddenly discovered that my husband was having an affair. I was busy taking care of my father-in-law, who suffers from dementia, and raising our young daughter. I had no clue about my husband's cheating. It turned out he had already planned to marry his mistress and was thinking about divorcing me. Faced with this harsh reality, I felt overwhelmed. Despite the shock, I continued looking after my father-in-law and daughter. My husband unexpectedly told me, "Since I'll be getting married again, you'll need to take care of our daughter and your dad." Despite the pain, I couldn't help but regret how we ended up here. I wondered if my husband saw me only as a housekeeper. His actions made me realize he was even worse than I had imagined. My name is Melanie Stewart. I'm 35 years old, a homemaker responsible for daily chores in my in-laws' home. Our family includes my husband Greg, our 4-year-old daughter Erin, and my father-in-law, making us a family of 4. Earlier in our marriage, Greg and I lived in an apartment, and I worked full-time. However, after my mother-in-law passed away 6 months after Aaron was born, Greg insisted we move in with his father because he couldn't leave him alone. It's been 3 years since we moved, and I've adapted to life here. Recently, my life has changed significantly. I shifted from working full-time to being a homemaker. 3 months ago, while cleaning up after a meal, my father-in-law asked me what day it was. His confusion seemed like a simple mistake at the time. However, his behavior continued to worsen day by day. He would want to eat again right after finishing a meal or forget where he had put things. It was clear that this situation was not normal, and I became worried. I suggested to my father-in-law that he see a doctor, but he kindly refused, leaving me at a loss for what to do. I couldn't manage my father-in-law's care alone. His symptoms might worsen if left unchecked. So I decided to talk to my husband, Greg, about his father's condition. Since Greg left for work earlier than me and returned after my father-in-law had gone to bed, he was unaware of his father's daily struggles. Typically, I would go to bed early with our daughter, but that night I stayed awake, waiting for Greg to return home. Just after 1 a.m., I finally heard the front door open. "Melanie, why are you still up?" Greg looked surprised to see me as he entered the living room. Seeing him awake me up from my sleepiness, and I immediately brought up my concerns about my father-in-law. "There's something I need to talk to you about, my dad. His behavior has been strange lately," I began. Greg listened, concerned. "He's losing track of dates, asking about meals right after eating, and becoming very forgetful. It's not just ordinary forgetfulness, something is clearly wrong." Greg's initial reaction was dismissive. "Really? Why?" "He's over 70. Maybe that's just how it is," he suggested. But I insisted, "No, it's serious. We should take him to the hospital." Greg's expression changed, and he seemed displeased. He sighed heavily and said reluctantly, "Aren't you overreacting? He's just a little forgetful." Frustrated, I pressed, "No, I'm telling you, it's not just forgetfulness." Greg then suggested, "Well then, how about you take my dad to the hospital? I'm too busy with work. Please handle it yourself." I had planned to take my father-in-law to the hospital, but he refused when I asked him. I felt I needed Greg's support, but he seemed indifferent and distracted, grabbing a beer and using his smartphone. My attempts to communicate fell on deaf ears, so I decided to give up and went to bed without a response. Despite my regular check-ins, my father-in-law stubbornly resisted going to the hospital. His dementia symptoms weren't constant. Sometimes he seemed clear-headed. I considered keeping an eye on him at home a little longer. Then one day, my father-in-law approached me seriously. "Melanie, I need to talk to you," he began. He acknowledged his abnormal behavior and admitted feeling scared when alone during the day. He requested that I quit my job and stay home with him. I was speechless, shocked by his unexpected request. Confused, I asked for clarification. He explained that he felt uneasy alone and offered to cover our expenses if I stayed home. He pleaded with me to consider this, mentioning that we should go to the hospital first. He noticed my recent struggles at work and suggested this might be an opportunity for me to quit and find a new job. His words left me conflicted. On one hand, I was moved by his desperation. On the other, I had been contemplating quitting my job due to changes in management and a less welcoming atmosphere. Several colleagues had already left, and I felt uncertain about the future, especially with a young daughter to support. While I knew I needed to work for financial stability, finding a new job while managing my current one felt overwhelming given the circumstances. My father-in-law's proposal sounded very appealing. With his financial support, I could take the time to find a new job. Sensing my hesitation, he continued in a warm voice, reassuring me that once I secured a job, he would go to the hospital or move into a facility if needed. He expressed a desire not to cause any trouble and asked for my help until I found new employment. It was a sincere and heartfelt request. After discussing this with Greg, I made the decision to quit my current job and care for my father-in-law until I found a new one. The caregiving mainly involved assisting with daily tasks and meals, which wasn't too burdensome. He provided us with a monthly allowance for living expenses, which allowed me to spend more time with my daughter. I was grateful for his support during this period. 2 months into my life as a homemaker, I had almost secured a new job after a successful final interview and receiving a job offer. Excited, I immediately went to share the news with my father-in-law. However, I found him on the phone and waited until he finished the call before approaching him. "Excuse me, father, may I have a moment?" I asked. He acknowledged my patience and asked if I had overheard his conversation. I assured him I hadn't listened in. "I see. Did you need something?" he inquired. "I found a new job and wanted to share the news with you," I announced. His face lit up with joy, and he congratulated me warmly, as if he had received good news himself. "That's wonderful. Congratulations," he responded cheerfully. Now that my new job was settled, the next step was to arrange for my father-in-law to be taken to a medical facility. I'd planned to set this up the following day, later that night. However, my husband, who typically returned home late, came back a bit after 7:00 p.m. When I greeted him with surprise about his early return, he dropped his work bag without emotion and coldly said, "I'm marrying her, so I want a divorce." I was too stunned to respond. Greg continued, indifferent to my shock, insisting that I sign the divorce papers he brought along. "Wait a minute, what's going on?" "We have Aaron, and you can't decide on a divorce like this," I protested. Greg callously replied, "I don't care about you and Aaron anymore. Thanks to your obliviousness, I've been able to continue my relationship with my other woman. I appreciate that." His revelation was a devastating blow. Greg then added, "Since it'll cause problems for my second marriage, you take care of the kid and dad." He gave me no time to prepare emotionally for this bombshell. I wondered how we had reached this point. I had faithfully cared for his father as part of our family. Why would Greg have an affair? Did he only see me as a convenient housekeeper? The weight of it all was too much. Overwhelmed with anger and hurt, I confronted Greg. "Stop being selfish. How could you think I'd accept this?" I exclaimed, but Greg was adamant. "Whether you accept it or not, it's already decided," he replied callously. When I mentioned Aaron, Greg insisted, "You should take her, along with the annoying father with dementia." His words stung. "You quit your job on your own, so I owe you nothing," he added, showing no remorse. I felt my heart break. I realized I couldn't be with this man anymore. I agreed to the divorce, but made it clear he was not welcome back in our lives. Greg smirked maliciously as I signed the papers and left. He left a message on my phone informing me he was moving in with his mistress until they found a new place. Alone and unsure of my next steps, my father-in-law approached me. He had overheard our conversation and prepared a room for us in advance. He pulled out photos from a detective agency revealing Greg's affair. My father-in-law explained that he suspected Greg's infidelity months ago. He pretended to have dementia, encouraged me to improve my work situation, and secretly planned for this day, waiting until my life was stable enough to handle the truth. My father-in-law had prepared for unforeseen circumstances by investing in a $3 million tower mansion with significant assets. He used the insurance money from my mother-in-law's death to secure our future. When I expressed my gratitude, he humbly thanked me for making his days enjoyable. He then shared his surprising plan with me to counterattack against Greg, who believed he had lost his mind. 2 weeks later, after we moved into the new apartment, I contacted Greg. Immediately, he called me angrily, accusing me of destroying his family home. Confused, I revealed that it was my father-in-law's doing, not mine. Greg was furious and couldn't believe his father's betrayal. He accused his father of pretending to have dementia and orchestrating the entire scheme to protect me from Greg's infidelity. In the midst of Greg's shock and anger, my father-in-law took the phone and calmly informed Greg that he would inherit nothing. He had prepared the apartment for me and Aaron's future, as well as arranged his own care facility. We sought damages from Greg and his mistress through a lawyer. Despite their attempts to negotiate a lower amount, I stood firm. Eventually, both Greg and his mistress were transferred to separate branches with significant salary cuts. Now, my daughter and I live comfortably in the apartment my father-in-law prepared for us. It's conveniently located near a station, making my commute to my new job easy. My father-in-law moved into a facility where he's enjoying his time with new friends. We visit him regularly, grateful for his support and the new life he helped us build. My daughter and I look forward to continuing our happy lives together, cherishing the kindness and planning of my father-in-law. My name is Kim, and I'm living on a pension due to my age. I have a daughter named Angela who works as a tax accountant. She spent her 20s focusing on her studies and work, which meant she remained single during that time. However, after turning 30, she found someone and got married. I believed a new life was waiting for her, but I never expected something shocking like this to happen. Angela has been good at math since she was a child, which made studying enjoyable for her. This led her to pursue a career as a tax accountant. My husband and I always encouraged her to follow her passion, telling her that she had talent and that we would support her. After graduating, she worked at a tax accountant's office for about 10 years before starting her own firm. Our family and Angela's friends were thrilled and celebrated this achievement, which is a happy memory for me. However, by the time Angela set up her own office, she was already 35 and still single. She had put romance on hold to focus on her career, but did have a desire to get married. As Angela became more settled in her office, she started engaging in matchmaking activities. During one matchmaking event, she met Chris, a salesman who worked for a small to medium-sized company. He was 2 years younger than Angela, but impressed her from the start with his polite manners and attentiveness. Angela was moved to find such a wonderful man existed. Chris even noticed when her drink was empty during the party and called the waiter for her. He also shared his umbrella with her in the rain. After they arrived at the station, Angela noticed that Chris was quite wet from the rain. Despite being rained on himself, Chris made sure to keep the umbrella over Angela, showing his gentlemanly qualities. Angela herself thought he was the one, and after several dates and a confession, he accepted, and they started dating. Chris has always been considerate and kind to Angela, making her realize that love could be wonderful. About a year later, Chris proposed to Angela, and naturally, she accepted, becoming someone's fiancé. Hearing this, I was moved to tears. Actually, I lost my husband 3 years ago, and until his death, he always said, "I just want to see Angela in her moment of glory." Unfortunately, he passed away from an illness before his dream could come true, but I've reported to him in heaven. I'm sure my husband is also pleased with Angela's engagement. Later, Angela and Chris started living together in Angela's apartment, feeling happy every day. But this happiness was not to last. One day, Angela called me, "Mom, Chris wants to formally greet you. Can we come over soon?" This call from Angela was such joyful news. Angela and Chris were planning their marriage registration and wedding date. Chris' respectful wish was to formally greet us before these events. I thought he was a wonderful man, but my impression changed a bit when he came to greet us. I had never spoken face-to-face with Chris before. My conversations with him were limited to occasional phone calls during dates with Angela. The prospect of meeting him in person made me nervous. On the scheduled day, Chris and Angela visited my home. My name is Chris, and I'm engaged to Angela. I wanted to greet you before we get married. His first words to me felt a bit off. Angela had described him as more assertive, and even from our brief phone conversations, I had imagined him to be more lively. But at that moment, he seemed hesitant and lacked vigor. "Thank you for coming all this way," I replied, but Chris responded, "Well, it's just manners." I couldn't help but sense his unease. However, when Chris mentioned, "I heard about your husband's passing and wished I could have met him," I thought maybe he was indeed a sincere and good person. Angela reassured him, "You seem tense. Just relax. It's all good. We had dinner together, and then they left. Yet, I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was different. Angela started to feel it too as time went on. After they officially registered their marriage, Angela called me one day. "Mom, Chris has been saying some concerning things lately." Hearing that, I considered my own feelings and decided to listen to Angela's story. Then she said, "You know, when Chris went to greet you on his way back, he said something like, 'I was surprised. I thought she lived in a bigger house.' What do you think, Mom?" It seems Angela gave him a proper response to his question at that time. After Dad passed away, it was just Mom by herself, so she moved into a smaller, slightly older apartment. Chris seemed to understand at the time, but later made a remark that troubled Angela. "Mom's gaze doesn't seem to settle. Does she even know who she's talking to?" Angela had to explain that the shock of my husband's death had deteriorated my vision until I became blind. Chris reacted, "Huh, blind? And you're sending her $1,500 every month, seriously? That means the pension isn't enough, huh?" I see his response, slightly tinged with a bitter smile, puzzled Angela. She was surprised that Chris brought up the financial support she had mentioned in the past. At that moment, she couldn't speak the truth. Furthermore, as they were planning the wedding, Chris asked, "Can your mom attend the wedding? Is money going to be an issue?" This made me wonder how he perceived me. I reassured Angela, "What's there to worry about? Tell him everything's fine." Despite my growing concerns, the wedding expenses had already been paid, and it was too late to call it off. "Let's just enjoy it." I concluded our call positively. Of course, I would attend and celebrate my daughter's big day. I couldn't dampen her spirits by expressing any negativity about the wedding. However, on the day of the wedding, I encountered an unexpected situation. Assisted by someone acting as my eyes, I was shocked to find that Angela had about 20 colleagues and friends from her office. But Chris had no co-workers present, only 3 friends and his parents. The imbalance was striking. Maybe his co-workers were busy, and considering Chris' age, it's possible that many of his friends were already married, making it difficult to gather a large group. So I tried to stay positive as the ceremony began. At the wedding, I was somewhat reassured seeing Chris's lively demeanor during the reception. When it was time for the bride and groom to change outfits, I decided to greet Chris's parents and friends. Chris's parents were very polite, leaving a good impression. However, the conversation with his friends was unsettling. They said things like, "Should we congratulate you? What should we say? We do hope your daughter finds happiness. It's unbelievable Chris is getting married. He must have used his sales skills, right?" Their manner of speaking, as if hiding something, left me feeling uneasy. My feelings about the groom fluctuated greatly, but eventually doubts about the marriage's validity grew stronger. The words of these friends were not something you'd say to the bride's mother. Regretfully, I even considered that Angela might be better off divorcing should the need arise. Of course, I didn't want to imagine such a reality. Yet, when the newlyweds re-entered after changing outfits, my fears seemed to become reality. Angela appeared in her finest, which was described to me by my companion. "She's wearing a long pink dress and looks very beautiful." Hearing that, I imagined it in my mind and wished I could have seen it with my own eyes. But the reality was complex. I couldn't shake the feeling that marrying Chris might not be the best decision for Angela. During the reception, Chris began his speech, which quickly took a turn for the worse. "Thank you all for gathering here today." He started properly, but then claimed, "My dream is to live a life of leisure and play, and marrying Angela has made that possible." The audience murmured at his bold statement. Whether he noticed or not, Chris continued, "But to achieve my dream, there's something I must do." The atmosphere shifted dramatically, leaving everyone anxious about what he would say next. Chris then shockingly declared, "Angela earns a lot and even sends $1,500 monthly to her mother-in-law, but that money would be better spent on our living expenses. It seems her mother-in-law is blind and receives little pension. Angela's support interferes with my dreams." "A blind old woman is nothing but a nuisance," Chris said. We will stop the financial support. The audience was stunned into silence by Chris' unexpected words. Angela panicked. What are you saying? This isn't the place for that, and you can't just decide to stop the support. But Chris insisted. What are you even talking about? Our life together is more important than your mother. Indeed, the discomfort I initially felt was not misplaced. Ultimately, it seems Chris approached Angela with her money in mind for marriage. But when he came to my house, he probably assumed based on its old appearance that the pension must be low. He thought Angela's earnings were being siphoned off by me, treating me as a nuisance. But did he really think it would work out for him? He doesn't realize that he's the one who will end up seeing hell. After his selfish remarks worsened the atmosphere, with Angela feeling more indignant than I did, she must have thought the celebratory mood didn't matter anymore. Indeed, Angela's friends looked at Chris with disdain. Then Angela forcefully took the mic from Chris and calmly asked him, "You seem to be misunderstanding something. Do you not know who my mother is?" Chris retorted, "What? What are you suddenly talking about, Angela? Isn't she just the kind of person I mentioned earlier? A nuisance old hag who sucks up our living expenses." Hearing this, Angela sighed, seemingly exasperated, and began to enlighten him reluctantly. "You see, my parents are the owners of a metalworking company. It's a small company, but the name is quite well known now. They have even started selling metal art pieces that are popular not just in the US, but internationally as well." When Angela mentioned the company's name, Chris's voice gradually became quieter. Angela continued to explain, "That's why you see, my parents make quite a bit of money, probably more than 3 times what I make. Now that means they've contributed a lot to their pension. Now that they've handed the company over to their employees, they're receiving a substantial pension. They have plenty of savings. My father's inheritance has come in, and they can live comfortably without my financial support. They even employ 2 housekeepers because of the blindness." Chris's face paled as Angela spoke. "But if that's the case," he stuttered, "you don't have to live in such an old house, do you?" Angela firmly responded, "Living in a big, beautiful house would mean a lot of cleaning, right? Besides, living alone means I don't need that much space." Chris seemed unable to say anything, just shivering. Finally, Angela made it clear. "Also, just so you know, the $1,500 I send is just me paying them back for my college fees and the room we're living in now. That place was bought by my parents. My mother says I don't need to pay it back, but I insisted, so she accepted it. That means the house is technically in my name, so you'll need to leave," I told Chris. Chris was shocked. "What? Why do I have to leave? We're married, aren't we?" He must have seen what was coming, but Angela was clear. "We're getting a divorce. We just registered, but let's call this a divorce ceremony." She then came over to me, having made her stance clear. I stood up and addressed everyone at the venue. "I apologize for the turn of events despite your gathering here. But as a mother, I'm glad this divorce ceremony took place. My husband in heaven and I are very pleased with that." Everyone in the venue began to applaud me and Angela. Even Chris's friends joined in the applause, possibly recognizing the stature of our company upon hearing its name. I then bowed to Chris' parents again. My companion told me they seemed genuinely sorry. As we left the venue, Angela and I felt strangely liberated despite the outcome. Later, Angela returned the wedding gifts and paid her share of the wedding expenses as agreed. The divorce was finalized easily with the help of a lawyer, and Angela returned to being single. She apologized to me for falling for such a man and causing trouble. But I told her this might have been a good experience for her, considering her past indifference to romance, potentially a valuable lesson for her future happiness. Upon hearing that, Angela said, "It really is different with a charismatic company leader. I want to be like you, Mom," and we both laughed. That reminded me when Chris's friend said, "Typical of Chris, the salesman," it meant he had the talk and actions to deceive Angela, which in a way might be admirable. But being blind allowed me to sense feelings through the tone and pitch of a voice. So, was it that I immediately felt something off about the way Chris spoke to me? Perhaps I was more skillful after all. Meanwhile, Chris really seemed to be relying on Angela's earnings, bragging about his wife at work excessively. But what he boasted was, "My wife isn't really cute or fun, but she's seriously loaded. With this, I can quit my job whenever I want. How jealous are you?" It appears he was truly a man lacking morals as he garnered disdain from his co-workers, becoming ignored by everyone. No wonder nobody attended the wedding, and after the divorce, his entitled attitude got him fired by the company's president. Now without income, Chris was responsible for half of the wedding expenses, but had no money and no one willing to help. The 3 friends who attended the wedding said, "Well, we attended because he came to ours. But otherwise, we wouldn't want to attend such a guy's wedding. We aren't that close, and he only gave a $30 gift at our weddings. What kind of nerve is that?" They weren't really friends. It seems even Chris's parents, having had enough of his actions at the wedding, refused to lend him money or let him return home. Forced to take a loan to pay his share of the wedding expenses, he's now living a miserable life in a rundown apartment, barely making ends meet with day labor. My name is Lucy, and right now I live with my husband Alex in the same house as his parents. We bought this house 3 years after getting married, but shortly after we moved in, Alex's parents unexpectedly showed up. They thanked us profusely for buying the house for them, bringing a lot of luggage along with a moving truck. I was shocked, but Alex seemed unfazed as he greeted them casually and ushered them inside. As Alex's mother mentioned counting on me, I realized they intended to live here. Feeling overwhelmed by their luggage, I asked Alex what was happening. He casually responded that we bought the house for his parents to live with us. I was stunned. I had mentioned the possibility of living with my parents sometime in the future, but never discussed living with his parents. Why did this sudden arrangement come about without my knowledge? Confused and feeling blindsided, I questioned Alex about his decision. He seemed to realize he hadn't consulted me and mentioned that if we were going to live with anyone, it should be his parents rather than mine, to prevent them from taking over. I was so taken aback that all I could manage was a surprised "huh." It was especially bewildering because he had previously agreed when I mentioned living with my parents. Perhaps Alex had agreed before just to avoid confrontation with me. By inviting his parents first, he prevented my parents from moving in. What was he really thinking? He agreed before when I mentioned my parents eventually living with us, but now he brought his own parents. Are they really going to live here? I've been pondering a lot too. But he didn't wait for my response and rushed for an answer, so I couldn't say no at that moment. "I didn't rush you at all," he countered. "I just asked for your opinion. I wanted to live with my parents." "Then you should have made that clear when I brought up the topic of living together," I retorted. "Stop acting like a child." Living with Alex, I've realized he has a very childlike personality. Whenever I do something, he comes over curious, asking, "What are you doing?" Maybe children are easier to deal with. If a child shows interest in household chores, you can suggest, "Want to try?" and they might engage. But Alex asserts housework is not a man's job. I thought dealing with a childish adult might be more troublesome than an actual child. Apparently overhearing our argument, my mother-in-law started keeping her distance, advising Lucy, "You might feel dissatisfied over trivial matters between husband and wife, but some compromise is necessary." I sensed a demand in her words. My in-laws seem to view me merely as an appendage to their son. If they think I'm just an accessory making a fuss about not wanting to live together, her behavior makes sense from my perspective. Alex is the accessory, but they don't seem to see it that way. My mother-in-law was eager to help with household chores, but their attitude was grating on my nerves. This situation continued, and as I pondered how to respond to their attitude, Alex's sister Kate visited. Kate is 5 years younger than me, already married 3 times, and currently living with a new husband. When I returned home, Kate was already there. "Welcome back, Lucy," Kate greeted me. "I heard about it. You stood up to my brother and tried to kick our parents out of this house." I was shocked and looked sharply at Alex sitting beside me. Why would Alex tell such a lie? Was it to make me look like the enemy? Alex wilted under my gaze, averting his eyes. If he felt awkward, he shouldn't have chosen words that blamed me in the first place. Then Kate, who had been observing, stood up as if to protect Alex. "Lucy, if you're going to make such a face, please leave. Just as I heard, you are a demon wife. It's bad for prenatal education to have you around." Being suddenly told to leave, I was confused about which part of the house she was referring to. For a moment, I thought she wanted me to leave Alex's room, where he was enjoying conversation with his sister. But that didn't seem to be Kate's intention. She stroked her belly and said, "I'm planning to give birth in my hometown. So, Lucy, I don't want you in the house, at least until my child comes into this world." Confused, I replied, "What do you mean?" "Wow, Lucy, that face is scary. No wonder my brother avoids you. You might be close to getting divorced." Kate teased me with a smirk on her face. When I looked towards Alex, he was avoiding my gaze, looking down. Even if the other person is a dear sister, anyone would stop her from criticizing their wife. However, just as Kate pointed out, maybe Alex is getting tired of me. But being told such things, my interest in him also waned. I can't forgive him for inviting his parents to live with us without my permission and for speaking ill of me to his parents and sister. His attitude seemed to belittle me. Why should I continue to treat such a person with affection? I felt my feelings for him growing cold. And since there was no room, I decided I'll be using your room. Please organize your belongings now, big brother, Kate continued. Say something too. It's been hard for you because of the demon wife, right? Kate prompted Alex. Alex hung his head at Kate's words but stood up, pulled up by her forceful hand. Prompted by her, he gave a strained smile and said, "My important sister is going to give birth here, so we don't need you. You can sleep on the streets or something." Reflecting on the 3 years of marriage, I took a deep breath and replied, "All right." Kate exclaimed with joy, raising both hands. "Really? I'm so happy." Alex let out a sigh of relief as I didn't respond with anger. However, in my heart, I had decided to give appropriate punishment to Alex, Kate, and my in-laws. One evening during a family dinner, I presented Alex with divorce papers. His face was a picture of surprise. "Sign the divorce papers," I said. "You want me to leave this house, right? If you don't sign, I'll stay here." "If that's the case, big brother, why don't you sign?" Kate interjected. "But in the end, I think Lucy won't file them. I'd often use that trick to get them to sign. And if you don't want a divorce, just follow along." It seemed Kate had used these papers in the past to manipulate situations to her advantage. Such a person is bound to be divorced, I thought, but she seemed oblivious. Alex, accepting Kate's suggestion, signed the divorce papers without hesitation. It bothered me that he misunderstood my intention, thinking I presented the papers just as a threat. Normally, such documents aren't presented without the intention to divorce. However, getting his signature so easily made me feel a bit lighter. Now I could take full revenge on them. The divorce was finalized, and I promptly organized my belongings. At that time, Kate was back home, confirming her plans for childbirth. Hence, she said she didn't intend to come to the house until my belongings were properly stored and the room was cleaned. As a result, I diligently packed up after returning from work. In the meantime, I found and signed a lease for an apartment suitable for singles and began the process of selling the house. After moving my necessary belongings to the new apartment, I visited my in-laws' house. There, I found Alex, Kate, and my in-laws all together. Knowing that my father-in-law and Alex would be off work that day and that my mother-in-law and Kate didn't work, I decided to visit when all of them were present. My sudden visit surprised all 4 of them. Moreover, when I arrived, 3 of them, except Kate, seemed to have been enjoying alcohol since the afternoon. In their presence, Alex was saying, "Lucky that woman left. She thought if she got angry, everything would go as she wanted. She acted so arrogantly, troubling me. My mother-in-law responded, "Indeed, Lucy had a somewhat difficult personality." The reason I was angry with Alex was that he started living with his parents and even made me leave the house for his sister, all without discussing it with me. I was angry because of his unreasonable actions. However, it seems within the in-laws family, I am somehow perceived as the bad one. Listening further, remember the girl I introduced earlier? It seems he started dating her, but she's a better match than the previous sister-in-law, right? I think a more adorable woman suits my brother better. They discussed his shocking affair. If the relationship started a week ago, that was when I was already proceeding with the divorce, so I guess it won't be an issue of infidelity. But still, his actions infuriated me. I briskly opened the room door and checked the faces of the chatting in-law family. The four of them seemed not to expect my return and were surprised. I came with the real estate agent. "Ah, Lucy, who is that man behind you?" Alex asked, pointing to the man behind me. Before I could say anything, Kate exclaimed, "Isn't that sister-in-law's new partner? Brother, this is infidelity. Let's make her support us financially." Amidst everyone thinking Alex and I are still married, I've lost all patience with Kate, who, despite having introduced Alex to a new lover, is now making a fuss demanding money. Amidst this, the real estate agent handed a business card to my father-in-law and greeted him. Looking at the card, my father-in-law wondered, "Why is someone from real estate here?" The agent replied, "To appraise the value of this house." My in-laws exchanged glances and started laughing. We plan to continue living here, so no appraisal is needed. However, the agent clearly stated, "Actually, this house is in Lucy's name. She wishes to sell it, so we are proceeding with the sale." Upon hearing this, my in-laws showed expressions of surprise, seemingly unaware of this fact. Perhaps Alex hadn't accurately conveyed this information. Alex said he would explain the details himself, so I left it alone. However, from my in-laws' attitude, it was clear that they had not received this information. They seemed to think I was just a burden and that Alex was supporting me by buying this house. So I plan to explain the truth about the house's ownership and financial aspects to Alex and his parents if the situation doesn't improve after a while. However, before I could explain, Alex's sister, Kate, appeared and kicked me out of the house as the owner. Therefore, I judged the dialogue with this in-law family became difficult and decided to take direct action. That action was to find a new home for myself, complete the move, and then promptly sell this house. Alex seemed to take Kate's words at face value and was complacent, thinking I wouldn't divorce. Seeing Alex's surprised face, I sighed inwardly. Since I, the owner, was kicked out of this house, it makes sense to sell it, I explained. "It might be, but this residence is mine as well. And since we're married, it's also yours, right? Now my parents and sister are living here too. So, whether you or your family are here, it's irrelevant to me. Besides, we divorced quite some time ago. You signed the divorce papers, right?" I submitted them to the city hall immediately. At my words, Alex seemed shocked and said, "What?" He seemed to think the divorce papers were just a threat. Disappointed, I sighed again. Then Kate started accusing. Such an unforgivable woman, this she-devil, using my brother's money to get the house and then putting it in your name. I wonder who she thinks is the cause of this situation. I stared at Kate. "Your beloved brother actually doesn't have any money. He's working, but all his income goes to repaying borrowed money." "Why does my brother have debts?" Kate asked. "Isn't that because he paid your living expenses?" Kate had been married 3 times, but 2 of them ended due to her infidelity. Each time, she would say, "Please keep it a secret from my parents. I don't have the funds, so help me." And Alex would comply with her unreasonable requests. At first, I didn't notice, but then I discovered that the savings we were supposed to be building together had significantly decreased. I confronted Alex about it, and it turned out that he had been giving living expenses to his sister Kate without telling me. Despite this, I resolved the house payments using my own savings. I was beyond surprised and felt utter disdain for him for giving his sister such an amount of money. Even if he said he would pay back the money in the future, I could no longer trust his word. I hired a lawyer to recover our joint savings that he had squandered. Before I could share this fact, his parents, learning about their daughter's infidelity, exploded in anger. All of her past divorces, she said, they were due to personality clashes. To think Kate was unfaithful, such a dirty child. We didn't raise our children to be adulterers. Wait, Mom, Dad, it's just Lucy talking nonsense. This isn't true, Alex protested. Perhaps feeling disadvantaged in this situation, even Alex, who doted on Kate so much, exclaimed, "It's all your fault because of all the money I gave to you to support your life. I ended up in debt. And because of you, Lucy, and I had to divorce." Hearing this, I said, "Is it really all Kate's fault? It was your decision to suddenly bring your parents to my house, wasn't it? It was you who collaborated with your family to label me a wicked wife. And to think, just because your sister is your favorite, you planned to drive me out of the house, eventually leaving me to live on the streets. That's ridiculous." He tried to cling to my leg, but I kicked him away. "I'll be getting back all the money I paid on your behalf. Prepare yourself. I'm coming with my lawyer tomorrow." With that, I left the house. While we were talking, the house valuation was completed. Fortunately, it looks like the house will be sold as I hoped. The next day, when I showed up with my lawyer and explained the list of expenses he had wasted, his parents, looking at it seriously, said, so much money existed. Yet because of Kate's actions, they glared sternly at Kate, who was at the corner of the room. It seems his parents came to the house believing Alex's words about taking care of things from now on. But Alex's lies and Kate's adulterous actions had destabilized their retirement life, and they were furious. Alex incurred additional debt after that. He was immediately kicked out of the house and ended up living in a simple apartment with his family. Kate, facing condemnation from her family, decided to live with her husband for a while and gave birth. However, since the child's hair color was clearly not her husband's, she was kicked out of that house as well. It was difficult for Kate to raise her child properly, and the child was placed in an institution. Kate, with nowhere to go, seemed to have no choice but to return to her condemning family. It seems she is still being asked for money by Alex. But I am free. I am enjoying my independent life and considering trying something new in the future. When my husband Sean returned home, his presence always seemed to bring a cloud of unhappiness. He immediately began venting his frustrations on me, despite having already eaten dinner and claiming he didn't need it. His suit and bag lay scattered on the floor, a clear sign of his agitation. Reluctantly, I started cleaning up after him. As I picked up his suit jacket, a piece of paper fell out. It was a completed divorce form, signed by Sean. Shocked and trembling, I realized that Sean was considering divorcing me. My name is Michelle, a 52-year-old housewife married to Sean, who is 3 years older than me. We've been together for over 2 decades. My naturally shy nature has often made me an easy target for others to take advantage of. This tendency to avoid conflict and keep my opinions to myself stemmed from past experiences, like losing belongings without standing up for myself. However, things changed when I started working. The company culture emphasized teamwork and communication, which forced me to interact with my colleagues. Surprisingly, they were supportive, and I learned to express myself. Sean, who was initially my supervisor and later became my husband, played a significant role in this transformation. He encouraged me to voice my opinions and supported my growth. Sean was not only skilled at his job, but also had a pleasant personality that was admired by both clients and coworkers, making him popular among female employees. However, I only viewed him as my boss and never harbored any romantic feelings towards him, despite his popularity. Then, Our relationship took an unexpected turn during the company's year-end party. I accidentally got drunk due to nerves, and while my colleagues were concerned, Sean offered to take me home. I felt guilty for inconveniencing him, assuming he preferred to stay and socialize with the rest of the staff as the boss. But when I apologized, Sean said something unexpected. He expressed that he didn't mind being inconvenienced by someone important to him, and he reassured me not to worry about it. I was taken aback by Sean's words, and as I tried to process them, he suddenly confessed his romantic feelings for me, saying he liked me and wanted to date me. It was a shock, but I found myself feeling happy about his confession. I asked for some time to think it over, but gradually, I began to see Sean in a different light. Our feelings for each other grew, and we started dating. 6 months into our relationship, Sean proposed, and we got married. At the time, it was common for married female employees to resign, so I left my job to become a full-time housewife. After we married, we soon welcomed our daughter into the world, and I dedicated myself to managing household tasks and raising her while supporting my husband Sean. I put a lot of effort into taking care of our home and nurturing our daughter, and I took pride in my parenting abilities. However, after more than 20 years of marriage, I began to notice a significant change in Sean's attitude towards me. It seemed like he no longer saw me as his wife, especially evident in his sighs and constant irritability whenever he came home from work. His gaze towards me became harsher, and his criticisms grew increasingly hurtful. He would often comment on my appearance, telling me to stop going without makeup and to dress better, even comparing me unfavorably to a maid. Despite trying to save money, as our daughter had recently moved out and found a job, Sean reduced the amount of money he gave me for household expenses. Consequently, I couldn't even afford to visit a hairdresser and had to resort to cutting my own hair. The decrease in our living expenses was partly due to Sean's increased business trips, which seemed to involve a lot of drinking and additional expenses. Despite my concerns about this sudden increase in trips, Sean justified it by saying he was mentoring his subordinates and had a responsibility to accompany them. In the early days of our relationship, Sean's business trips were rare and mostly for romantic getaways, with generous allowances provided by his company. However, now these trips occurred every 2 weeks, and the allowances were considerably less. When I questioned him about this change, Sean explained that he was accompanying his subordinates on their trips as their mentor. At this point, Sean had been promoted to sales director, so it seemed reasonable that he would be taking care of his subordinates. However, something he said while drunk one night stuck in my mind. He mentioned how the company had many young and attractive girls, unlike me, and that it was a real feast for the eyes. I felt mocked and degraded by his comparison, especially considering I was over 50 years old. It was unfair to compare me to the younger women at his workplace. I couldn't shake off the suspicion that Sean's frequent business trips might involve accompanying young female employees. If that were the case, it would mean that my living expenses were being sacrificed for his escapades with these girls. I couldn't forgive such behavior, even if I wasn't sure if he was having an affair. It felt unjust to have endured so much only to be treated this way. Sean's overnight business trips continued to increase, happening almost every week. All I could do was silently see him off, as he always claimed it was for work, leaving me no room to argue. When he returned, he often mentioned the same woman's name, comparing her beauty unfavorably to mine. He made hurtful remarks about my appearance, especially when he was drunk, showing his disdain for me. Despite Sean's flaws, he seemed oblivious to them. He had gained weight over the years, and his personal hygiene had declined, especially in the summer when he sweated profusely. His hair had also started thinning, yet he had the audacity to criticize me while ignoring his own shortcomings. When I suggested increasing my living expenses so I could pay more attention to my appearance, Sean dismissed it, saying it would be a waste of money. However, when he wasn't satisfied with the meals I prepared, he lashed out, blaming me for not being able to do even the simplest household chores properly. It felt like a double standard, and I couldn't help but feel frustrated and resentful. I was really upset after Sean took control of my bank card. He claimed I was wasting the money I've earned, so he decided he would manage my salary. It left me speechless. Despite my attempts to reason with him, he wouldn't budge. Sean's contribution to our household income was minimal, which is why I had started working part-time. Then, out of the blue, he announced he'd be going on a solo business trip for about 6 months. I thought, fine, at least he won't be at home. But then he dropped another bombshell. We needed to cut our living expenses even more while he was away. I couldn't believe it. We were already struggling to make ends meet. There was barely anything left over each month, and sometimes I had to dip into my savings. When I protested and asked for my bank card back, Sean exploded into anger, calling me greedy and refusing to return it. I felt lost and powerless. A few days later, Sean left for his assignment, and I reached my breaking point. I couldn't continue like this. So I sought advice from my workplace, and they suggested opening a new account and having my salary deposited there. With online banking, I could manage everything easily. I followed their advice immediately, and soon enough, my salary was being deposited into my new account. Thanks to this, I could finally take control of my finances and lead a proper life again. Life continued for about 2 or 3 months after I took control of my finances. Then, I received a call from Sean, questioning why there hadn't been any salary deposited. Suspicious, I told him I had quit my part-time job and got fired. He responded with disdain and hung up. It felt like he was planning to use my salary without my permission, so I felt relieved that I had changed my account. Feeling uneasy about Sean's actions, I decided to hire a detective agency to investigate. About a month later, they uncovered a shocking truth. With this revelation, I made up my mind to separate from Sean and began preparing for a divorce. Time passed quickly, and the day Sean was supposed to return from his assignment arrived. When he walked in the door that evening, he seemed unusually lively at first. However, his mood soared as soon as he saw me, and he began taking out his frustrations on me. Despite my inner fury, I maintained a calm facade and welcomed him back. I knew it wasn't the right time for revenge yet. Sean grumpily headed to the bath, leaving his belongings scattered on the floor. As I picked up after him, a piece of paper fell out of his suit jacket. A completed divorce form with Sean's signature. My hands trembled as I realized he had been considering divorcing me. Overjoyed at the opportunity, I decided to submit the form right away. Sean didn't notice as he returned to bed exhausted, snoring loudly. Meanwhile, I wasted no time. I packed my belongings and left the house immediately, canceling my cell phone plan and switching to a new one to avoid Sean's attempts to contact me. I headed straight to a lawyer's office. Sean bombarded me with emails, likely realizing I was missing, but I ignored them. I stayed in a hotel that night and visited a real estate agency the next day to find a new place to live. I had already chosen some promising apartments in advance, so I quickly settled on one and began making preparations. Later, I reached out to a colleague of Sean's from his workplace, who had been there for over 20 years. She responded promptly, and I shared the shocking news of Sean's affair with a subordinate named Nicole, along with his deceit about taking sick leave to care for me. She reported it to the company, leading to a major investigation. As a result, Sean and Nicole faced consequences for their actions, and Sean was ultimately fired. Despite Sean's attempts to contact me, including blaming me for his troubles and begging for a chance to talk, I ignored them all. Through a lawyer, I claimed compensation and got back my bank card, which he had used without permission. Sean's life took a sharp downturn from being a well-off man with a respectable position to an unemployed middle-aged man overnight. His affair partner left him, and he even blamed me for that, but I paid no heed to his words. Recently, I became a full-time employee at the company where I had previously worked part-time. I'm focusing on my career, staying connected with my daughter, and enjoying meals out together. From now on, I plan to savor my single life to the fullest, both at work and in my personal life.